Hey everyone, it's Nicole, the founder of Wicky. I've got Sashane with me. We're going to do a semi-regular podcast where we discuss all things predominantly T20 cricket, and you'll get to know our characters over the time. I'll be fluffing my way through and chatting all things cricket, and Sashane will add a lot more analysis and detail. So before I go on, Sashane, you want to do a very brief introduction about yourself, and I'll do one about myself as well?
Hey, Chen, I am so, oh my God, I can't, I'm so excited. We have been planning this show for, God, how long?
Too long.
Weeks. And we're finally getting to do it. I'm super, super excited. So, hey, just in terms of formal introductions, hi, I'm Sushen. I'm a marketing person here at Wiki. You may have interacted with me at some point over the course of the last several months, whether it's on our Discord or on our social media. And now you get to see me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, to do a really quick introduction about myself, as you can probably guess by my name, I was originally from India. I was born in Mumbai. Really cool, actually. I was thinking about Sushan how to introduce myself, and I realized I was born in Shivaji Park, which is obviously the famous area where Sachin Tendulkar grew up playing his cricket, and so many other famous Mumbai cricketers have played their cricket. And I went to school literally right opposite the Sydney Cricket Ground. So I've got a really rich background with cricket. Unfortunately, that did translate to playing the game, but I do love all things cricket, and it's really nice to now be able to obviously work on Wiki as we have for the last 3 years, and work on and talk all things cricket all day, every day, which has been really good fun.
Sweet.
But so when Sashane said we've been planning this for a while, I was literally in India for 5 weeks working with Sashane every odd day, and I found 7 different excuses not to get started. So apologies that we've waited so long, but obviously you've seen our stuff over Twitter and Instagram. Most of that is Sashane. So obviously hit us up on socials if you've got any questions that you want us to look into. But getting into it, when we were going to do this, it was the start of the IPL, and now it's obviously our first episode, and there's literally 2 games to go. So being from Mumbai, I'm obviously pumped that Mumbai's still in with a shot. But I'll let Sushan do a little bit of the talking and get it to Chennai, and obviously they've gone straight to the final.
Oh my God, yes. So Chennai, so we're recording this on the 26th of May, and Chennai have long had their feet up waiting for somebody else to make the final to be as good as them. Uh, so they've already made it to the final, and they're going to be playing. We will find out who today on Sunday. It's between Gujarat and Mumbai. I really wanted to talk a little bit about Chennai, though. It's something that, like last season was so bad for them, and yet like this season, like one of the constant themes in the polls that I've been putting up on Instagram throughout this whole time, follow us by the way, has just been like, I want Chennai to win. I'm loving the revival. I want Chennai to win. It's so good to see them back in form, and they have been back in form. It's something that it's been good fun watching them. I think in some places there's just so much to talk about. We've seen the return of the famous Chennai spin joke. We've seen the overseas batter at the top in Devon Conway doing so well. We've seen a very, very good season from Shivam Dube, in fact. Kind of against what I was expecting, and I would say a great season for Ajinkya Rahane as well. So it's been like resurgence all the way through. That's been pretty much the theme of their season so far.
I think just one thing I wanted to ask, Ajinkya Rahane, like I was in India while the IPL was starting, and I remember Rahane got a couple of really good innings at the start of the IPL. Do you think I've lost a little bit of my link with the IPL coming back to Australia. There's like 12 a.m. starts. It's very hard to follow, right? Do you think Rahane has a role to play in the final, or have they kind of got enough players around him that you think Rahane is just a sort of bit part player in the middle now?
Rahane definitely did his bit earlier in the season, and he's got his place. But I do think there are a couple of other guys who are sort of stylistically more important to Chennai than him, despite his sort of incredible results this season. And this is something that I put out on Twitter the other day, and it was a passing thought that was kind of sparked by something that our friends at Flash Score had put up just before the Chennai Gujarat game on Tuesday, and it was just that something like Chennai had hit the most sixes in a game 10 times in a season by that point or something. And I was like, and I picked up on that, and I quote tweeted that, and I said something like, I look at Chennai's 6 hitting numbers or boundary hitting numbers, and Shivam Dube's name jumps out at me, and it's just you're talking about somebody who has almost 3 times as many sixes this season as he has fours, which is just incredible, and for if Chennai are the six hitting team, then Dube is their like standout six hitter in that team.
That's awesome.
By the way, this is a good question for you. Um, so there are two guys at Chennai who have more sixes than fours this season. One is Shivam Dube, which I've just told you. Do you know who the other one is?
I would have had to guess. Dhoni just based on him not facing that many balls and having to hit sixes. Would that be right or no?
Yes, that's it. You got it right.
Oh, good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it shows that I do know some stuff about the IPL. There you go. All right. Well, Chennai is done. Let's get into my favorite team. Obviously, being from Mumbai, I got to say it's weird. Like when I was finishing up high school, which is when the IPL started, I had a really deep connection with Mumbai, with Sachin Tendulkar still playing. And I got to say, for most of the last decade, that hasn't really been there. Like we haven't had too many big names from Mumbai. Obviously, there was Rohit Sharma. Like a Mumbaikar from Mumbai. Seeing Arjun Tendulkar play at the start of the IPL was a really nice, like, emotional moment. Brought that connection back, I think, or at least personally from my point of view. And then on the other side, you got two Aussies: Tim David, Cameron Green, Berendorf as well. Make it three Aussies actually, doing quite well for Mumbai. What are your thoughts on Mumbai? Funnily enough, my brother-in-law is from Gujarat, so this has an extra level of interest in our family. What do you reckon? Can Mumbai get the job done?
One like that last game of the league phase, just that game against Hyderabad where they put up 200 and Mumbai chased it without breaking a sweat. Like that convinced me that they could just beat anybody, and that they're hitting form at exactly the right time. Cameron Green made 100. He played really well in the knockout game against Gujarat as well. Gujarat? Lucknow, I'm sorry. Lucknow, yes. Yeah. So it was just like they're hitting form at exactly the right time. And I think, as with every competition, every tournament kind of thing, peaking at the right time is really important. Team David was the one who really caught my eye from Mumbai. It's something that I had sort of like done a little bit of analysis earlier in the season, earlier this month, in fact, which I thought was super interesting. Just sort of like breaking down his numbers by bowler type. It's something that I kind of heard about here and there, bits and pieces over the last year or so. And the essence of it was that Tim David is just the most indiscriminate hitter of any bowling type in cricket, T20 cricket today. It's just like he hits everything equally brutally all the time in every league, everywhere. And I ended up breaking down his. It wasn't quite as he wasn't quite as egalitarian in respect for the different bowler types as I first thought when I looked at the data and sort of so on that we'd sort of been putting together. He definitely was like he's a very good hitter of left arm pace, by the way. Like this is something that I wouldn't have guessed on first glance, but he's and I'll sort of throw up a graphic on screen to sort of show what I mean when you're watching this, or if you're listening to this later, you'll be able to see that. Yep. So that's something that really caught my eye. I know the guys at the Top Edge podcast sort of were building a case for Team David to make the Australian World Cup squad with the sort of reasoning that he now got 2 seasons of the IPL under his belt. He's got all this experience. He's got he's like he fills a perfect role in the Australian middle order. He can bowl a bit, and that's like it's just too perfect, I think, to be true.
I think what's funny. I'm gonna make a bit of a standout call here. I reckon there's more chance you see Aaron Finch batting at number 6 for the Aussie 50 over World Cup team than Tim David. I don't mean that seriously, but I'm really happy you mentioned the One Day World Cup and the Australian team, because I think something that I find really interesting and funnily enough, the team that I probably watched the most this IPL is Mumbai. And Tim David and Cam Green. I think growing up living in Australia and hearing all the talk around Cam Green has been Cam Green is the next big thing. He got fifers with the ball and he dominated with the bat. He's translated across the Test cricket. Like he's kind of shown so much already. And then he had those 1 or 2 good innings in India and got a big IPL deal. And all the talk was, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. You're paying for potential. What role is he going to play? And seeing what he's been able to do in this IPL, like, I don't know if you watched that last game against Sunrisers, but I was watching that game and I was like, oh, come on, these guys, they obviously they didn't have anything to play for, and it just felt like Cam Green was just bullying not so great bowling attack. But then I actually watched him bat again against Lucknow in that last final, and I was like, holy shit, he's doing it again. On what's meant to be a slow pitch, he was just creaming it from, I think, he 2 boundaries in his first 4 balls again. And then I'm a big one for body language, and seeing Cam Green's enthusiasm in the field when Mumbai were getting runouts, I was like, holy shit, like we're literally seeing a boy becoming a man on the cricketing world stage. Like genuinely, like really impressive. And I do support India in cricket, I am very worried about the World Test Championship. Like I genuinely thought it was close to 50-50, or I was confident with India's chances. But seeing Cam Green take this step up in his development has me pretty worried, to be honest. But at least for the IPL for now, it's good news. And I think Gujarat on the other side, I think is it Gill that's also got in 200s in 2 innings? Gill and Kohli did the same thing, is that right? Or 203 innings, something like that.
Yeah, they followed Shikhar Dhawan and Joss Butler. So I think those are the 4 guys who have back-to-back hundreds in the IPL now. So it's Shikhar Dhawan, Joss Butler, Virat Kohli, Shuman Gill.
Insane. Well, with Gill, he is probably my favorite player in world cricket to watch at the moment. But heartbreakingly, I haven't even seen the highlights for his 200s. I'll do that this weekend. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Gujarat and what do you think of their chances now?
Gujarat are like I would say that they were pre-tournament. They were one of the favorites pre-tournament, and I know this has been kind of like a random IPL, and it's been like there's so much excitement over the uncertainty, and there's like so many teams being in contention until late on. But Gujarat are here. I think the fact that they were the first team to qualify for the knockouts, they definitely deserve that. They're just too good, I think. And like the collapse in that first knockout game against Chennai was came quite out of the blue, I'd say. But I do think that especially with them playing at home in the final, possibly, that game's not done yet. That would definitely hold them in good stead. One of the guys that really caught my eye was Mohammad Shami. I think I'm right in saying that he's the tournament's top wicket taker. He's not just Gujarat's top wicket taker. I think they have the 2 bowlers with the most wickets in this tournament so far at the point that we're recording this. So that's Mohammad Shami and Rashid Khan. And the really interesting thing I guess you would say stumbled upon with Shami in the course of generally sort of playing around with the data and sort of looking at stuff that was sort of generally like looking for what was up at Gujarat and what might explain why players are doing so well is, and I put this out sort of a little bit earlier this month as well, is that Shami's role has actually changed quite a bit for Gujarat from last season. And where last season he bowled quite a bit more in the middle overs, he still bowled most of his overs in the first 6. And sort of like, I broke it down into like a nice pie chart with like colors and percentages, which I can also throw up on screen. And it's very much like, and so the gist of it is very much last season he bowled quite a bit more in the middle overs than he bowled this season. And this season it's been very much a case of he bowls 2 up top, 2 at the end, 2 in the first 6, 2 in the final 4. So he's gone from being, let's say, 3 parts of the innings to just split into 2 phases almost equally.
Can I ask just a quick question on the power play stuff with Shami? Has that been around, him trying to get movement early, or has it just been a case of like a change of tactic for the team?
That's a good question. I think going back maybe a few years when he wasn't quite as good as IPL cricket as he is now, I definitely got the feeling that they were trying to bowl out Shami early on because he's an attacking bowler who can get a bit of early movement, but also like just bowl him enough so that he doesn't disappear at the death. Right? Yeah. I think when you're playing for Punjab, there was still a genuine concern, but I feel like this has been kind of like a very sort of marked step forward for him in his career. So I would say that it may have, at least last season, it may have begun out of necessity, knowing that this guy travels at the death. So let's not bowl him at the death. Let's try and bowl him out at the start of the innings as much as possible. But I feel like he's definitely improved as a bowler in that regard.
Nice. Well, as you'll probably get to know with this podcast over a period of time, Sushane will be your source of information and analysis, and I'll fill you up with random cricket stories. So the thing I asked about Shami is because I remember years ago, like he was a he's been a good bowler for India for most of the last decade, I would say. There was a tour of, like, for me, my, I guess, pinnacle for cricket is when India comes here, because a lot of my friends, obviously being Aussie fans and myself being an Indian fan, it's very important for many reasons. But we were actually, me and a couple of friends flew to Adelaide for the India-Australia test. And it was, I'm going to say, the night of day 2 or 3. And we had a few beers at the game, a few beers after the game. Before you know it, it's like 11:30 at night, and we find ourselves on what they called a Bollywood night at a club in Adelaide. And when I say a club in Adelaide, it's a small room with like 15 people. That is a club in Adelaide. And the most random thing happened. You're obviously like 2 nights into a test match, and we look the other way and we see Mohammed Shami out. And I'm like, it's 11:30 at night. He's literally bowling first thing tomorrow. And me and my friends were furious. Like, dude, we've flown, we've paid all this money to come watch you play, and you're out at a club. Like, he was just drinking Coke Zeros or Cokes or whatever. But I thought, what the hell is this guy doing? We were furious. And we wake up the next day, hungover after 2 days out in the sun. Morning of day 3, we're like, oh, we hate this Shami guy. What the hell is he doing? He's not taking his Indian jersey seriously. And he gets a 5 for that morning. So I think it's not the first time that Shami surprised us on the global stage. I'll tell you that much.
I love it. Waiting about that story.
Yeah, well, in terms of cricket stories, I guess we've covered the IPL. Really excited to obviously see how things go, and in our next episode, we'll obviously know who would have won, and we can obviously spend a little bit of time on them. But I think, whilst I was in India, we obviously had a lot of time in person to chat about the Blast. We've been speaking to some of the teams in the Blast and see how they use data, see if they'd be interested in working with a company like ours, and really excited to obviously build on those relationships longer term. But obviously there's been a few games now. I think, what days is it? Friday. So there's been at least 3 or 4 games, I believe, in the Blast already. More than that.
Almost into the first week of the Blast.
There we go. Yeah.
The one game
there was a gap from
last,
right?
There was a few days.
Yep. Fair enough. Well, with the Blast, as I said, really tough time zone wise for us, but I will be starting to watch the highlights every day. But can you tell us, have you caught up with any of the Blast and anything to note early on?
Yeah, I did. I was so excited to actually catch up with the Blast. This is one of the great things about sort of working here, like the sort of deep level of involvement with so much T20 cricket. I've never watched so much T20 cricket in my life.
You can tell your family members that it's work, right? You have an excuse.
Yeah, but I feel like, because I feel a lot more like in tune with so much more T20 cricket around the world. Super Smash, the PSL, the Blast, the BBL as well. For the first time in years, I caught up with that.
I'll definitely be forcing you to get into the BBL, don't worry.
Yes. Oh my God. Hey, BBL Supercoach did that for me, by the way. That was just so good. Anyway, that's a different story. I caught up with a bit of the Blast. It's been good fun. I think 2 of the things that really stood out to me was because they played twice and won 2 games, Lancashire really stood out to me. They were the first. I watched them in the first game of Blast against Derbyshire, I want to say, where you like this. So Lancashire have the Melbourne Stars as Luke Wood. You might remember him as being the sort of like BBL Supercoach legend because of the free wickets he used to pick up at the back end. And I remember on our Discord there was quite a bit of chat at the time about how, Wood is like this really good Supercoach option because he gets a bunch of junk wickets at the end. And then the game doesn't really discriminate how you get your wickets, it's just that you get them. And I'm sure if you're a veteran of this past season, you'll remember the 5 for 50 he took against, I don't remember who it was, Hurricanes maybe?
I'm not sure who it was, but I think was it early in the season?
Early season, mid season somewhere.
Yeah. It was a big deal for Supercoach. I remember that much. Yes.
Oh my God, yes. And so I watched him bowl in the first game. He looked pretty good. He was getting a bit of movement, very different to the kind of effect that he had in the BBL. But that was actually good fun to. I think 2 wins from 2 games now, Lancashire, and just like starting the competition with maximum points, which is great. Okay.
Nice. I think the other thing I was going to say, look, I got to say, as I said, I've been following the scores, but not much else so far, unfortunately. But I have seen that obviously you spend a lot of time on content. You put some cool graphics out on Twitter and Instagram. And I think a big thing for us is we want to be around, with Wicky, I probably should have introduced us a little bit more at the start, but we want to be around the space of cricket analytics long term. For that, that means putting out content, having this podcast, building relations with analysts and cricket teams all over the world, right? So is there anything, I guess, you want to go through in terms of like the content that you've been putting out there? Because I have noticed that the engagement's been really good. So I'm keen to see what you've been doing there.
Oh, just a couple of things. Yeah, I've got a couple of things related to that. So one of the new things that we're trying out this time for the Blast is something that it's an idea that we've, like the two of us in particular, have worked on. I'd say the two of us and the data guys have worked on sort of in varying capacities over the last month or 6 weeks or so. And it's our player portfolios, which is like these single graphics that contain all the relevant information about a particular player, batting, bowling, stats broken down by opponent, by bowler type, by game phase, etc., etc. So we've been sort of playing around with that a little bit, got an interesting response on Cricket Twitter, which is pretty cool. And we're going to sort of like going to keep continuing, taking a bit of feedback, seeing if there's something we've missed out, if there's something we can improve on. I'm going to throw up something on the screen to sort of show you how that's been going along. In fact, I think, hang on, I might have it with me here, and I sort of show you what I've been working on here. Yep. Yep. So you can probably see it right now. It's like a super sort of like array of colorful. This was the first one that we put out there yesterday, and it's like the super colorful, super like detailed infographic of Ryan Higgins' batting performance against. So here's the story on Ryan Higgins. Now he's an all-rounder who played initially for Middlesex, then he went over to Gloucestershire for a bit. He did really well there. Did very well in Fantasy County Championship, which I'm thankful for. He did really well for my team there. And he's just come back to Middlesex for the first time since 2017. He's going to be playing for them in the Blast. He did play for them in the Blast, in fact, yesterday. That was his first game for them back against Surrey. Didn't go so well, but I'm going to get into that in a bit. But here I sort of laid it out in terms of his batting performances and his bowling performances, which I think like sort of contain everything. There's overall stats at the bottom, and there's breakdowns by team, by game phase, by bowler type for the batting stuff right here. It's something that we've been working on and will continue working on bit by bit. So here's the interesting thing about the game phase stuff. So I sort of just generally I was putting it out there on Twitter that I was looking at Higgins' numbers from Gloucester last season, and I was like, he bowled a lot in the middle overs for a guy who went to 15 runs and over in the middle phase, right? And I was like, maybe he shouldn't be bowling there. Maybe he could possibly bowl a bit more at the start or at the end. And he did bowl one over at the start of the game against Surrey, and he started that over okay. He bowled what? I would say 4 balls for a run, something like that. And he was bowling okay right until the end, and then he just got hit by Will Jacks for 2 fours at the end, and that just ruined his over. But I think 9 overs maybe not so bad. 9 dozen overs still maybe not so bad. And then just Jacks and the two and Sam and Tom Curran just got after him in the middle overs. I think he got hit for 5 straight fours in his second over, which wasn't great. But that was in the middle phase. I'm going to say yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, Sushant, like I think the most important things about these graphics, and I know obviously I've had some meetings with analysts from some of the different counties and a couple of the PSL teams actually as well, is like the stuff that we're doing. We're working on this stuff full time, 5 days a week. We do split our time across cricket and rugby league, but essentially when you see these graphics, when you see the data tool that I've shared with some of the analysts for some of the teams, it is literally like the starting point of what we're trying to do. So for any teams that are out there, any analysts that are out there, we'd love to have a conversation with you around, hey, look, this is some of the stuff that we have done, and which is, obviously the point of getting stuff out on Twitter or on Instagram, but there's an endless amount of stuff that we can do and that we'd love to do. So it'll be an ongoing thing across the next few months. You'll see more and more of our stuff across our podcast and our social media, but yeah, really excited to see what else Sushant whips up, and I'll try to fluff around and make some sense of it on the podcast. I think one of the other things, I forgot if this was a graphic, but you definitely mentioned to me earlier this week something around James Vince, and obviously living in Sydney, he's been a star for the Sixers no pun intended, but he's been really good for the Sixers for a little while now. Is he like the star of his team, or is he just really good in Australia? Like, does it relate or?
It's both. It's definitely both. He was the Blast top scorer last season. 678 runs was the total, I want to say.
Oof, okay.
Man, I've looked at these stats so much over the last month.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of the long and short of it is, I remember picking up on this. I think sometime during the PSL, I want to say, um, where I just sort of looked at it just out of curiosity. I thought, oh, this Vince guy was really good for the Sixers in the BBL. I remember he was super good in Supercoach. He was one of our Supercoach picks for one particular round, and he just stayed in the team throughout.
Yeah.
And that was sort of that was actually the first time he showed up on my radar. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's actually been playing really well, like all across the world. And I just thought, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Like he's probably been good for the Sixers. But then I sort of like went digging, and the whole sort of process of like going through the data and cleaning it up and things like that, and just sort of came to me that wow, this guy's actually done really well in T20 cricket over the last year, like really, really well. And I remember putting out a tweet to that effect, which I can show you right now. I've got a link to it saved right away.
Awesome.
Okay, so it's right here. It says on form, James Vince is one of the world's best T20 players. After 3 ducks in the last 6 innings in the PSL, he's top scorer in the Blast. He's made 263 runs in the BBL. He was second top scorer in the IL T20. And he was currently the sixth top scorer in the PSL, and he just made the fastest 50. And he won 2 of those competitions as well. You know,
That's
yes, I've been saying this.
Can I just?
And I've been saying this.
As an Aussie,
yeah.
Sorry, I'll just finish. Like, as an Aussie living in as an Aussie that follows a lot of the Big Bash, what you would have seen just before that, he dominated the finals in the BBL, not last year, but the one before, 21-22, dominated, did really well in the finals, and I'm pretty sure the Sixers won that year. I might be getting this wrong, but I know he definitely dominated the finals. It might have been the Scorchers that won it, but yeah, like he's not only does he get runs, but he also wins trophies. So he'll have to have that. Is it Dan Christian? I forgot his exact quote, but he had a quote on The Great Cricketer saying, "I just go around the world winning titles." So we might have to have Vince have a more polished version of that quote.
He's one, yeah.
No, awesome. Okay, well, I think in the first podcast, obviously we tried to cover off a bit of the IPL, bit of the Blast. Going forward, we'll have a lot more Blast or conversations about the Blast. But I think just taking away from T20 to wind up, couple of big things coming up. We've got the World Test Championship final, India versus Australia, which is going to be it's actually going to be worth staying up till 2 or 3 a.m. or whatever it is in Sydney for, because it's going to be mouthwatering. So that's the first one, and then there's the Ashes after. So I've got an unlimited amount of stuff that I'd like to say, but I'm going to try to keep it short. But before I go ahead, what do you reckon, Sushan? Who's winning the World Test Championship final?
Oh, you're putting me right on the spot, aren't you?
Yep. No offense.
That's tough. I've not actually thought about it. I've been super excited about the game itself. And I just never thought. Okay. I'm going to say, because they've been in county cricket for so long, playing quite a bit of the season, Pujara and Manas are going to be the 2 best batters in that final. And I'm going to say Australia win. And I realize this is going to be clipped and cut and distributed all across social media when India march to a 10-wicket win and Manas gets out for a duck.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that, yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going the opposite. I have put myself on the spot. Honestly, I didn't think of bringing this up before we started. But I reckon India win. And my reasoning is I think Australia has how do I say this? I think Australia, especially with Cam Green, I know it's T20 cricket and stuff, but I think with Cam Green is the person that I'm most scared about. I actually think that India's batting from 1 to 8 or 9, depending on what they end up doing. I think India's batting is sort of more trustworthy across the board. Whereas as a fan of Indian cricket, I know, when they're bowling at the Australian lineup, I can almost see how 3 or 4 of those batsmen get out. Whereas the Indian batsmen, I think a Smith or a Manas could quite comfortably get an 80 or 100, and like I wouldn't be surprised. Whereas with the Indian batsmen, I think it'd be more tricky for them to get big scores, but I trust them from 1 to 8. Whereas with the Aussie batsmen, I think there's only 2 or 3 guys that I'm worried that will get a century. Sounds a little bit weird, and I'm obviously making this up on the spot, but I think both bowling attacks, excellent. I think the Aussies probably have an edge there. If Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, and Lyon are all playing, Green is an amazing fifth bowling option. So I think they've probably got the edge there, but I just trust India. If they bat first, they might be 4 for 110, but I still think they can get to 250, 270. Whereas, like, I think India can roll through Australia. So this is going to be so bloody good, though. I think it's also the perfect conditions for them to be playing each other. I think sometimes in Australia, like, obviously the flatter pitches. In India, you get the wrong turning deck and the game's over before you actually see the battle properly. Whereas I think in England, as long as the rain predominantly stays away, I assume there's a rest day. It's like 6 days, I think.
Oh, the sixth day in the last final was just in case of rain.
That's as in like in case of rain. That's what I mean. Like the rain won't ruin the game unless it's like.
You said rest, yeah. I don't know if you I thought you were referring to the old rest day.
No. Yeah, as long as rain sort of doesn't ruin the game, I think it'll be an excellent matchup. And we'll go on about the Ashes a lot more in the next episode. But let's get. I'll go first because I'm again putting myself on the spot here. I reckon England win the Ashes. I do not see how this Australian team beats this English team over a period of 5 games. I think Australia have a really good first 11. I think Warner at some point will be dropped, and I don't see who replaces him. I also think the bowlers, I was very impressed with, I think it was the last Ashes. Was it 2-all or 1-all? I forgot how it ended up, but I think it was 2-all the last Ashes in England. And I was actually really impressed with them. I think it was Siddle that they took over from memory, but like they actually managed their bowling attack in a very mature way and very un-Australian. So I was actually pleasantly surprised. So I think tactically, if Australia does a good job of managing their resources, I think it could be really close. If they just go, this is our best 11 and we're going to try to do this 3 games in a row, I think England win comfortably. And I think even if Australia do a really good job, I think England might win like a 3-2, for example. What do you think?
I'm going to say England win. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another sort of New Zealand type test match going on there where they try to go for the win with a declaration and they just end up blowing up in their face. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But yeah, let's say England win for now. I've had even less time to think about the Ashes than I have about the World Championship.
That's fine. It's still 2.5, maybe 3 weeks away, I think, the Ashes. So we've got World Test Championship, few days, and then the Ashes. So I'm sure we'll change our opinions potentially in the next 3 weeks. But I think more than anything, obviously, like living in Australia, like it's weird with sport in Australia. It's a country that loves sport, but only ever at a certain time. So cricket will be discussed in December and January, and nothing else will pretty much. But then you go into the winter season, and I've seen a lot of people, like the great cricketer, love making jokes about how like it's all about the footy, it's all about the footy. So I don't think anyone even knows about the World Test Championship final, except for like 17 people on Twitter probably. But it's going to be a cracking game. I'll be doing my best to get my friends to watch it because I think it'll be a cracking game. And we'll have our turn at talking all things Ashes a bit later.
Just one last thing on the Blast, which I realized I left at the bottom of my sort of list of points that I wanted to cover, which I think I can come back to now. And this is a really minor thing, but I was quite interested to see that Worcester had picked up Usama Mir for the Blast. So he's this Pakistan leg spinner who I got to look at in the PSL, and he bowled really, really well. And I remember so by the way, just for context, first week of the PSL, we were all over it and sort of in the run up to it. And then the NRL started. And then that ended up consuming a lot of our time and attention. But I'm just going to show you something I wrote sort of at the time, which I thought was super interesting. And that's sort of what first got me to oh my God, this guy's on my radar. So this is something I wrote after the first week of the PSL, where I said that Usama Mir's form is quite encouraging. I found it interesting that his economy had stayed above 8 in the PSL for 3 consecutive years. And then at the start of the most recent season, it was in the mid 6s. And he eventually finished on, I think, 7.93, I want to say, 94, something like that. but it was under 8, which I thought was like a really, really big step forward in a very, very high scoring tournament otherwise. And I thought, oh wow, this guy's actually really good. And I'm interested to see what happens with him right now. And he got picked up by Worcester in the Blast. And I think I'm right in saying that he's kind of there until Mitchell Santner, who's still at the IPL, becomes available again. So he's there for the first 3 games or so. And I think he took 3 for 21 in his first game. And just like, and this is coming from somebody who rates Mitchell Santner really highly as a white ball player. I thought they're going to have like a real sort of selection conundrum on their hands when they have like, well, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I've got a soft spot for leg spinners. I've got a soft spot for Pakistani players. So you've hit the nail on the head with at least what I'd personally like. But I think we've done look, we'll obviously get better at doing these over a period of time, but we've covered IPL, we've covered the Blast, we've covered the World Test Championship Final, the Ashes, and now a little bit of PSL. So I think we've covered our bases. We'll have to we'll probably get a little bit deeper into the numbers next time and less of my Shivaji Park childhood stories. But no, really appreciate you coming on, Sushane. We'll really look forward to doing more of these. We'll know the winner of the IPL next time around, and we'll go a bit deeper into the numbers. So hope you guys have enjoyed it. And thanks Sushane for putting a lot of the content together while I do my best to wrap my head around it.
It's literally stuff I had done before that I thought was useful to bring up now. There was no new effort involved in this one.
Awesome, cool. Well, just quickly, if you have made it all the way to the very end, if you just Google Wicky Linktree, you'll see links to our social media: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So Shane is all over our Twitter with more quality cricket stuff than you'll see coming from me, anyways. But check it out. Just Google Wicky Linktree. And this podcast will be on there as well. So thanks guys for listening.